Welcome to the HIV Podcast. Each week we focus on a person, historical event or pop culture moment linked to HIV and explore the story of what actually happened. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Jess, and between us we've been working in the field of HIV for 40 years. Our aim is to get as many people as possible HIV educated.
Welcome to the HIV Podcast.
Oh, hello.
How are you this morning?
I'm very good. I think I should point out the obvious to start with. You're not Jess.
I'm not Jess. No, I'm not Jess. This is what happens when Jess is on leave. You get lucky with me. Never mind.
So welcome, Chantelle, my stand-in podcast partner.
Thank you for having me back. Pleasure to be here.
Never part of your job description though, was it?
It wasn't, but every day's a school day. I'm learning. It's great. I love it.
Oh, this is what happens when you catch someone off guard and go, oh, should we do an episode together? And they just look like a rabbit in headlights and go, yeah. But it's so lovely to have you here. And I should also mention behind the scenes today, we have Zoe, our producer. I've never felt so grand doing all the techie stuff.
It's just growing.
Yeah. I've roped you all in, all apart from Sue, who's out doing a drop-in today. So we'll start with news. Now, normally Jess brings the news.
Okay.
But she's not here today. Oh, we could do a shout out, couldn't we? Hi, Jess. We love you.
Jess. Miss you.
We miss you. Yeah.
Hurry back. Save me from doing another podcast.
So we've got two bits of news.
Okay.
The first bit is, it was on BBC News yesterday. So there's plans to create an AIDS memorial in London.
Okay.
And they've now got to the stage where they have shortlisted artists who will present their ideas to a panel in the next few weeks, I believe. And then the winning artist will be announced in the summer, and then the memorial will be ready in 2026. Now, we've talked about this before on the podcast. A previous episode, we looked at memorials around the country, and neither of us could believe there wasn't one in London. But now, finally happening.
So when you say memorial, do you mean as in like a statue?
Yes, something significant to remember all of those that have lost their lives to AIDS. And it's going to be near the former site of Middlesex Hospital, that had the first kind of dedicated AIDS ward, opened by Princess Diana in 1987. So I think that's quite an iconic place to have it. But I can't wait. Can't wait to see what it will look like.
So they're going to have, is it almost a bit like a competition almost, so where people will put their entries in of their designs, and then so who's the panel? Who decides what the final sculpture's going to be?
So the panel of judges are made up of the trustees of the charity behind this, AIDS Memory UK, art historians, doctors specialising in AIDS and HIV, as well as a board of people who represent communities affected by the AIDS crisis. Good.
Excellent. See, now I've got a vision in my head of what this could possibly look like. So when I was at uni, I did like a chemistry course, and we would look at the DNA of certain diseases and things. So in my head, I'm getting like maybe the DNA structure of HIV, or the DNA structure of how it turns into when it, if it goes to AIDS. But then I suppose it could be a statue of a person, like a well-known person who supported HIV. Yeah, it could be, couldn't it?
Yes. I don't know. I mean, the 5 artists, they include a former Turner Prize nominee, so they're kind of quite highbrow. But I think it'll be very interesting. I can't wait to see what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I think, whatever they choose, it's going to be kind of iconic and obviously representative of our community. I just think it's great.
Yeah. All communities have statues, don't they? Memorials. So yeah, why not for HIV? I think it's a wonderful idea. Yeah, very excited to see what it's going to be.
Yes, I will.
Or molecules or some kind of DNA structure.
They need you. They need you on that panel, don't they?
Well,
out of all of us, you are the most creative.
I am open to being on that panel. Think about art or sculptures.
Well, we'll see what we can do. All right, do you want to know another bit of news? Oh, you were there. actually, for our other bit of news. So our drop-in yesterday, it was pouring with rain all day. I think we all became a bit, what's that word that you use when you're cooped up indoors?
Oh, there's lots of words for that, Sarah.
I can't think this morning.
Thinking of a professional word.
Probably not. But we were all cooped up indoors.
You were.
At the drop-in, it rained all day and we just all became a bit manic in the afternoon. Thank goodness at the end of the day you suggested we all try and see, do we do exercises?
And touch our toes. Yeah.
Just to kind of help, we've not had any fresh air, but the highlight of the day for me was our newest resident at TVPS Towers in our garage, a little fox.
I know. I wonder if the fox is still there.
Don't know. We've named her.
I'm convinced it's having babies.
I really hope so. I mean, I don't want to misgender them, but I've named her Florence. In fact, I didn't come up with that name. You might have done.
No, wasn't it Sue that come up with Florence?
I don't know.
Florence, Flo. I quite like that. Yeah, why not? I almost want to go to the office today, clean out the shed, sanitize everything, nice little dog bed, some toys.
Because that's what foxes are used to.
Yeah.
Sanitary conditions.
What do they call it when dogs have puppies? They call it a whelping box. Put a nice whelping box together.
Oh.
Make sure she's got all the home comforts of everything she would need. Little stereo, some soft music, some mood lighting.
We're very good hosts, aren't we?
Yeah. Totally agree. We are very, very good hosts. But wouldn't it be amazing if we came in to drop in at the next drop in and there were little baby foxes?
Oh, I'd love it. I mean, I feel months down the line when we're overrun with foxes, we might not be so happy. But at the moment, I'm good with it.
Yeah. I'd probably take one home.
Really?
Watch TikToks all the time of people of different pets, and people have rescued baby foxes and raised them, and they laugh. It's like a laugh they almost do when they're excited and you tickle their bellies.
Oh,
but then I should imagine a wild one would bite.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I imagine they would. I was just flattered that they chosen our garage. I think it shows what lovely people we are.
It does. How welcoming we are.
Yeah.
And come to TVPS Towers and have your babies.
Yeah. Yeah. No.
Can you imagine?
No.
Well, we will have to have a look. We will have to venture. I say we. I actually mean Sarah will have to venture into the shed because I should imagine there's a lot of spiders in there. So I won't be going in the shed.
No, yes. I mean, that's why I took Zoe with me.
Well,
and then when we got to the door of...
Zoe's okay with spiders?
I don't know, but we both went to have a look for the fox. And as we opened the door, I tried to push her in front of me because I thought if it gets Larry, jumps her, gets her, not me. She's young. She'll recover much quicker than I will.
Exactly. I like thinking.
But she was having none of it. She's very strong. Actually, I ended up putting my head around the door first.
Maybe she's not good with spiders. I'm not going... No, I can't. No. See, I've got spiders in my head now. I can't go in the shed if there's spiders in there.
Okay. Right. Let's move on.
Mm.
So this week, we're looking at something called VAIDS. But I'll explain the background to you. So this time of year, we do lots of social media posts about HIV testing and awareness of PrEP and PEP. And our social media is always, I don't think it's too strong a word to say, flooded with people who have opinions about HIV testing, suspicions about why we're advertising this. There's always people that think the government's behind our messages. And because this always starts around National HIV Testing Week, that's when we launch. But we then run a postal testing project for 12 weeks. So it's kind of ongoing. And the more posts we put out, the more people we get comment. Good comments as well from people who want to access the service or, thanking us for raising awareness. But comments that, to me, are just completely off the wall.
Okay. Have we got some examples?
Wow. There was one in particular. So we did an episode last year, remember, about anti-vaxxers.
Yeah.
And people can go back and have a listen to that because I could literally have just churned out that content for this year. But there was one comment in particular that's kind of started a debate that I thought, okay, what is this? So it's something called V.A.I.D.S. This person just put on the post, V.A.I.D.S.
V.A.I.D.S.
And I was like, I don't know what that is. But it stands for vaccine-acquired immune deficiency syndrome. and it dates back to 2021. And some people genuinely believe this is a condition. So from the outset, let's be very, very clear, it isn't. It does not exist.
So this is a made-up condition.
Yeah, that people believe is out there. They actually believe people are living with V.A.I.D.S. And it's like unbelievable.
Hold on, V.A.I.D.S. So people actually believe that if you get vaccinated, is that what you're saying, that it causes HIV/AIDS?
They believe it causes a form of immunodeficiency similar to AIDS.
Right, okay. Wow.
I know. So we know when someone is diagnosed with HIV, if it's left untreated, it kills your immune system. And if you have no immune system, you can't fight off illnesses. And there are opportunistic infections that love that environment because, left to their own devices and with nothing to challenge them, they can kill you.
Wow. Okay.
What these people are suggesting, I think is really extraordinary actually, is that the COVID vaccine, everything goes back to COVID, doesn't it? Has the potential to wreck your immune system to such an extent that it could potentially kill you. So in effect, what they are suggesting is that the scientists have created a virus similar to HIV or have just used the HIV virus itself, which is bonkers. Can you imagine it? More than 40 years after the initial AIDS epidemic, we don't have a cure, but we've managed to recreate and inject the majority of the population with the same properties as HIV, because that's what they're saying.
And the purpose of that would be what?
Well, do you know what? I've never got to the bottom of it. And this is why I find it so weird. It's
right.
Just like, why would anybody do that?
So let me get this straight. So V.A.I.D.S is pre-COVID. See, my whole life now is built around before.
Yeah, so is mine. No, this is
post. Yeah.
Post-COVID. So
post-COVID. Okay.
Social media posts started flying around about V.A.I.D.S dating back to 2021.
Wow. Okay. So somebody's come up with, it's almost like a conspiracy theory, I guess.
Yeah. They've come up with this based on no evidence whatsoever, or very limited evidence. We can go through that in a minute, and circulated it on social media, and people believe this and they will not listen to reason. So someone posted on one of our posts and said V.A.I.D.S, and I posted back and said, it's not a real thing. And they came back with, yes, it is. How do you...
Yeah, where's the evidence?
And so I said to them, please cite your source.
Yeah.
Which they didn't do.
I think
it was just so weird.
Post-COVID, I think a lot of people were vulnerable, weren't they? Physically and mentally, vulnerable and open to suggestion. So maybe somebody coming up with V.A.I.D.S and some people have just clung onto it.
We should come up with some sort of theory that makes everyone donate their money to TVPS.
We should, shouldn't we? Yeah. What could we call it?
I don't know.
I'm going to think about that now. That's my work for the rest of the day.
Yeah, you're the creative one. How can we get everyone to donate? Although, how awful though, if you could influence people to such an extent.
I mean, and that's what's happening, isn't it? It's, again, the power of social media.
It is. And what we're going to do now, we are going to look at what might be behind this kind of V.A.I.D.S theory and why is there so much suspicion around vaccines?
There is a lot of suspicion around vaccines.
And there's suspicion about health professionals. And I think people now don't know what to believe because there are so many theories going round. So we're looking a little bit at that at the end of the episode. So where's all this V.A.I.D.S stuff come from? Because that's what I like to know is like, how have we got to this point? Where are people basing their assumptions on and are they right to do so? I think...
Go on.
That the whole V.A.I.D.S concept comes from some people who had pre-existing autoimmune conditions experiencing flare-ups of symptoms after receiving a vaccine.
Yeah, that would make sense. That would make sense because we do know that various vaccines, you will have, feel a bit grotty maybe afterwards, like when you have the flu jab. Some people will say, well, it's giving you a dose of flu and that's why you feel unwell. Other people will say, no, it doesn't. But even with babies, when they have their first immunisations, they're prone to getting a temperature and being a bit ratty afterwards. So I guess, that kind of makes sense. But they're linking it to not the vaccine making them feel unwell, that it must be something else or something within the vaccine.
It is. And I think everyone's different, aren't they? So I had, when I had, I can't remember how many vaccines we've had now for COVID, but when I had them, I didn't have any reaction whatsoever. But my sister, she was really, really poorly, which sparked a debate about had it worked on me, but it worked on her, or if she were to get COVID, would she get it worse than me, and all of this kind of stuff. And it's the same, like you say, with the flu vaccination. I mean, I always take to my bed after I've had that anyway, Chantelle. It won't surprise you because, it's a day not caring for the kids.
It's an excuse to get out of housework.
Yeah, exactly.
Flu jab, my arm really hurts. I can't lift it very far. So, yeah, you can say,
Yeah.
sorry, kids, you're going to have to fend for yourselves.
The nurse said to me I should rest for the rest of the day.
Possibly the week.
Oh, I'd love to do that.
Depending on how I feel.
Do you know, the last time I had a flu jab, I had to go with my husband. I think it was the first year he was eligible as well. And up until then, we've had to have them for work or whatever. I've always said to him, they've said I can't do anything for the rest of the day, not to move my arm, just rest. And he had his jab and we're checking with the nurse saying, so should I lie down for the rest of the day? And she's like, no, you'll be fine. He was like, so you don't have to rest either, do you? And I was like, no, it's different for women. But
I like your thinking, yeah. Women, completely different. We're made differently. So, yeah, vaccination day is takeaway day.
yeah.
Be a national thing.
It should be. That's a really good idea. Right, let's pitch that to public health.
I think they'll go for it.
Right, let's go back to the VAIDS theories. So, and I know we're going back to COVID, but this is, even though COVID vaccinations, we don't have them anymore, people are still going on about kind of VAIDS. So when COVID vaccinations were given to people with autoimmune conditions, some of them had flare-ups, but the figures around it are quite kind of broad. So some studies said, about 3% up to 13% had flare-ups. Other studies that the risk of flare-ups was between 20% and 40%. This is when they specifically looked at rheumatic diseases, so those affect your joints and muscles.
Yeah.
So that's quite a broad range, and you don't know how many of those people would have had a flare-up anyway, regardless of whether they'd have the vaccination or not. So this might be where the VAIDS thing comes from, but it is no basis for firm opinions, not without thorough research.
Absolutely, yeah.
And there hasn't been enough research for anyone to form a strong opinion on the link between COVID vaccinations and autoimmune diseases.
So literally all it's taken is for somebody just to plant that seed.
Yeah, and then people have just run with it. Yeah. There's also a claim, I've seen this claim before. So the French virologist, Dr. Luc Montagnier, he received the Nobel Prize for the discovery of HIV. He was one of the people that discovered it. Okay. It's said that he recommended HIV tests for people receiving their third dose of the vaccination. But there is no evidence at all that he ever said this.
Oh, okay. So again, it's just hearsay that he might have said.
Just someone had a rumour saying, well, he said we should all get tested for HIV. I mean, he's passed away now, so you can't verify.
Can't even ask him.
No.
Whether it's true or not.
No. And again, it's just all over social media.
The power of suggestion.
I know. So let's clarify. And this is especially for the person who, when challenged on our Facebook page that VAIDS wasn't real, replied, well, if it's not a real thing, why have you heard of it? Which is interesting logic, because I was like, hold on. It's making me question the existence of Father Christmas.
If it's not real, why have you heard of it?
So well, Father Christmas isn't real, but I've heard of them. The Tooth Fairy, unicorns, leprechauns.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm trying to get my head around that. If it's not real, how comes you've heard of it? Yeah, that doesn't make much sense. To me, anyway. But
no.
But people are entitled to their opinions.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Yes. It made me question the existence of a lot of things. So I've heard of them. So they all must be real.
Father Christmas is real, Sarah.
Is he?
Yes, I still believe. 48, and I still believe. Don't spoil it for me.
Okay, I'll go along with that. But I would question his working practices, because those elves work for 364 days a year. He does one. This big corporate businesses, this is what's wrong.
He's supervising.
Is he?
He's making lists, checking them twice. This is the wrong time of year for Christmas.
Those elves are working 24/7 in quite poor conditions, from what I've understood, in a very cold climate. When do they get a break?
0 hours contract.
They need a union.
They do. Absolutely. Listen to us.
Do you know, it's reassuring to know it's not just Jess that I can go off on a tangent with. Who knew we'd end up
It's
talking about...
definitely me as well. Definitely me as well.
Oh, dear. Right, let's go back to what we were talking about. So I know now, far fewer people are being vaccinated. Is COVID still a thing? You don't hear about it anymore.
Not really. I mean, you don't have to test anymore, do you? They've stopped wearing masks in hospitals. And tests aren't free now. You have to pay for them, don't you? If you wanted to test for COVID, you have to go to the chemist and pay for them. So, yeah, I guess it's just become a new way of living.
Yeah.
So no, I don't really think COVID is a thing anymore. And there's no reports anymore about people dying from it and people being admitted. So, yeah, it's still going to be here in the background. It had obviously a huge impact on the whole of the world. But yeah, I don't think it is a thing. It's not as big as it was. Let's put it that way.
That's true. And that's why I find it interesting that these VAIDS rumours are still circulating because, they're not really moving on from COVID, are they? Like the rest of us are trying to do. They're still fear mongering. So let's just counteract what they believe. Just in case anyone out there ever hears anyone talking about VAIDS, let's give them all the facts to be like, no, this is not true. So COVID vaccines didn't contain HIV particles. You never needed to test for HIV after having a vaccine. That's not been a thing. VAIDS is not a real medical condition. COVID vaccines didn't cause immunodeficiency. There is no link between COVID vaccines and HIV. And COVID vaccines did not create subtype B HIV-1. We talked about this in our anti-vaxxer episode last year. That subtype had been around for a while. It just hadn't been discovered.
Okay. So
there we go.
That just lays it out there on the table, doesn't it?
Yes. Let's test your knowledge now.
Oh, wow. Okay. Go on.
So, Chantelle. Oh, I wish I had like countdown music or mastermind music.
I'm on the hot seat. I'm ready.
You are on the hot seat.
I'm ready.
Can COVID vaccines give you HIV or other immunodeficiency disorders?
No.
Excellent. No, they can't. Oh, if we were doing this face to face, I'd throw sweets at you.
Chocolate.
Oh, yeah, obviously. Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. The only way to get HIV is by, it's written here, encountering the virus. What a polite way of saying it.
Encountering the virus.
But you don't come
I prefer that to acquiring.
Yes.
Got to admit. Encountering, yeah.
Are COVID-19 vaccines made with HIV?
No, they are not.
No, they absolutely aren't.
Who even started that?
I don't know. Imagine it's just someone who has absolutely zero medical knowledge. Do you think they sort of heard virus and thought HIV, COVID, they're viruses, so therefore they must be interchanging them?
Very possibly.
Okay, does having the vaccine increase your risk of HIV infection?
Absolutely not.
No, there's absolutely no risk at all. That rumour comes from a letter that was published by a group of researchers in the Lancet medical journal in 2020 about developing COVID vaccines that used a specific virus vector called adenovirus type 5. That type 5 virus had been shown during trials for HIV vaccines to increase the chance of HIV in uncircumcised men.
Okay.
So the researchers are saying if you're going to use that same type of method for COVID vaccines, could it potentially increase your risk of HIV as well? In the end, their kind of theory remains just that, a theory, because those type of viruses aren't in wide circulation anyway. The original viruses, the original vaccines that use this adenotype 5 were developed by Russia and China. They weren't used anywhere in the UK, anywhere in America. So they developed these viruses, they put it out, and a lot of countries just went, well, no, although it's only a theory, we won't take the risk. So they weren't used. But I think that's where that comes from.
Right. Okay. So what was it called? Adeno5?
Adenovirus type 5. Or maybe it's adenovirus type 5. Adenovirus? Yeah, there you go. My pronunciation again.
Adeno? I don't know. No idea.
Let's just call it type 5.
But like you say, it comes back to something starts with a rumour and it gets passed along and then it changes a little bit as it goes along, and then somebody adds a bit and somebody takes away a bit, and then it just all gets out of control. And I really do believe that during COVID, people were vulnerable and people were up for believing lots of different things, weren't they? Because normally with vaccines, they're years in the making. There's clinical trials, there's studies, there's all the testing that has to be done. And then when you look at how fast we were able to come up with a COVID vaccine, and that there didn't have to be all these clinical trials, and that,
yes.
I think that maybe have fed into people's beliefs that, you know, VAIDS is real.
Yeah. And it absolutely isn't, as we've said. Although people on social media claim that COVID vaccines can cause immunodeficiency disorder, if you like, it isn't. It's not real. It's a myth. And there's absolutely no evidence whatsoever that COVID vaccine to immunodeficiency, HIV or AIDS.
And that's good to know. And it's important to know.
Yes. Yeah. So that's what everyone needs to take away from today's episode. But I thought we would have a quick look at why people believe so strongly in these theories.
Okay.
Because it does fascinate me. I know it's nothing to do with HIV, so, you know, bear with. So these theories, they're not just in the UK, they're all over the world. And there are some science bods in Japan are looking into why.
Okay.
Now, we know that a major source is social media, which is just brilliant, isn't it, at spreading misinformation, easily accessible, wide reach. But also what we know is that social media platforms are very sophisticated in presenting us with topics that we're likely to support or be interested in. You know, we've all been there, haven't we?
Is that something to do with, I don't even know, I'm going to say this right now, a logarithm?
Algorithms, yes.
Algorithms. I don't know much about social media and how it works. What I do know is that if I'm having a discussion about a holiday or a certain product, suddenly it will pop up on my social media, an advert for it, which I always find a little bit scary.
Oh, me too. Because how are they hearing us?
Yeah, it's like you're being spied on. Yeah.
And this is what happens, whether you Google something or use any kind of search platform to look up something. You know, you've heard someone go, VAIDS, and you've gone, I don't know what that is, I'm going to Google it. Or whether you've clicked on something on one of your social media feeds about conspiracy theories, for example, what happens then is that your feed starts to present you with more and more articles or posts related to what you were looking at. So what people do is they start with, I'm not sure that this is true kind of approach to hearing something, a conspiracy theory, but then social media sends loads more through to your feed, and it starts that process of you actually believing it, because if so many people are posting about it, must be true.
Must be true, yeah. And a lot of people do think if something's on social media, it must be true. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So it reinforces your beliefs, even if you didn't know you had those beliefs initially. Just the volume of stuff that's kind of being presented to you would lead anybody to think, well, okay, all of these people believe it, I should believe it too.
And I suppose what we don't do on social media is look for reliable sources. So if we were researching something for work, you know, we wouldn't say, Tracy on Facebook put this, so it must be true. We'd look for a reliable source, wouldn't we?
Yeah.
To get our facts. And that's what you don't do. You read something on social media, somebody can copy a link to a reliable source. We've all done it, clicked on things and, oh God, that's not what it's supposed to be. And unfortunately, people believe it. And then it just escalates.
And you can't help it. All we've done it. You know, I've made it very public on here. I'm not a massive fan of the government at the moment. So a lot of things on my feed are people with similar views. And you take a lot of comfort from the fact that other people feel the same way as you do.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
And that will cloud your judgment.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I think that's how easy it is to lose, like you say, the kind of point of the reliable source that you should be looking for, because you're just like, well, all of these people agree with me. So great. Let's start a revolution.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it is. Yeah. You don't look for those reliable sources on social media. And I think the important thing to take away from what we've been discussing today is that if you do have an immune deficiency disorder, doesn't have to be HIV, it could be any other disorder, it is important to have those vaccines.
Yeah, and if you're not sure, speak to medical professionals. I think there's a
Always.
huge suspicion, isn't there, around the health service these days and whether they are really there to keep us well. Again, I find this a very strange concept. Why wouldn't they? But they are the people to trust.
Absolutely, 100%. And they know what they're doing. But I have got a theory on where a lot of that comes from.
Yes.
I think so. Doctors' surgeries have changed over time, and you don't always have to go to the hospital to have a blood test or stuff like that. And I can remember years and years ago somebody saying to me, I went to the doctors, do you know the receptionist took my blood? That can't be right. What does she know about taking blood? Or the receptionist done my blood pressure. What does she know about doing my blood pressure? So even though that person's been trained to somebody who, doesn't have medical knowledge, is not scientifically wired, if you like, to turn up and the lady who's normally telling you to do one because you're not seeing a doctor today is suddenly your busy mate because she wants to take your blood pressure. So do you know what I mean? They might think, where's the trust in medical professionals now if just a receptionist can do your blood pressure?
Oh, that's interesting.
I've heard that quite a lot. Yeah. I've heard that quite a lot. They don't think that person's been trained into doing that and to knowing what to look out for. Yeah.
So it's our perception of what a medical professional should be like, I guess.
Yeah.
Or but nobody else should be qualified to do some of the. And actually, I suppose because we don't have as many staff within the NHS now and everyone's kind of stacked, aren't they, with work, they are looking for ways to ensure that they can keep up with demand and training people who might not have a clinical background to do those procedures that in actual fact are quite simple to do. You can test your own blood pressure. You can,
you can do that at home. Yeah. I think it's also important to remember as well that medical professionals, anybody who works in a professional field, they are only human as well. And people do make mistakes. Even brilliant scientists make mistakes. It's natural. It's a part of life. And sometimes people don't accept that, do they? With a medical professional, it must be, well, you're a doctor, so you can't get that wrong and you must know everything. And that's not always the way. But I completely agree with you. If you are unsure about a vaccine, always go and see your doctor.
Yeah, that would be my first starting point. They've got no reason to lie to you, which is what I find most alarming is people saying, oh, well, doctors aren't telling you the truth. I don't see what they have to gain from lying.
Nothing.
It doesn't make sense to me.
There's nothing to gain, It doesn't make sense to me either.
No. So let's pin all our hopes on these Japanese scientists who are trying to find a better way for information to be disseminated from approved sources that's been fact-checked rather than letting everything happen at the moment, which is where conspiracy theorists just put a post out and everyone kind of runs with it. It's not going to be an easy job for them. I mean, how on earth do you police social media? It's huge.
You can't police it at all.
No. You think back to the old days when, newspapers was everyone's source of information. So they still printed lies. Yeah.
I used to love reading newspapers, absolutely loved it. And I can remember being a child and just believing everything that was in the newspaper. Because, it was in the newspaper. Of course it's right. Must be right. They wouldn't print a lie, would they? And it's only as you get older, you start to realise, actually, that's not quite true.
No, it's not. No, even back then they were lying. But it was easier to find the source of those lies.
Yes.
Wasn't it? They were in print in a newspaper. So you've got your evidence right there. How you trace back lies on social media to the original post, that I've got no idea. I don't know if the Japanese scientists will ever be able to find that out, but they are trying to get to the bottom of this so that they can.
Great idea for a study.
Oh, I do too. I think it'll be really interesting. How do you manage that? It's constantly changing, isn't it? The output on a minute by minute basis, and it's happening in real time and it's very, very quick. So how do you stop that or manage how that affects people's opinions or how it changes their attitudes? It's a big old job, isn't it?
And our study for next week, Fox names, popular Fox name.
Oh, yes. Oh, we'll have to keep everyone updated. It's like Fox Watch, like Spring Watch.
It is, yeah. Very excited about this.
Maybe we should do the next episode from the garden, like those two that do Spring Watch. I'm going to need a new coat, like a proper country file kind of coat.
Country file kind of coat. And some Hunter Wellies.
Yes.
And one of those,
I'm definitely going to need that.
one of those checked flat cap things. Yeah. Are you going to be a collar up girl or a collar down? Depends on the weather.
It would depend on the weather.
Depends on the weather. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. Presenting from rural Slough.
Yeah, rural Slough. From the spider-filled shed.
Yeah.
The mummy fox and her babies.
In our brand new outfits.
Yeah, matching outfits. Very exciting.
I know. This is way better than when we had Wasp's Nest in the garden and we spent all summer trying to...
Screaming, running, crying. So
we didn't want to get rid of the nest because, you know, you're not supposed to harm wasps or bees anymore, are you? Is it wasps? Maybe I've got that wrong.
I think, bees you mustn't, but wasps, I think wasps are fair game. Wasps just sting you for the hell of it, don't they? They don't, like, if a bee stings you, a bee dies. But a wasp just stings you and it's like, I'll come back for more.
Really?
See you in about half an hour.
Oh, for round 2.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Oh, well, look, we have reached the end of our episode. I think I've said all I need to say. I can go back to manning our social media. You can go back to all the client work. Thank you so much for being an excellent podcast co-presenter.
Thank you for having me again. And thank you for educating me as well.
You are very, very welcome.
I have learned about VAIDS and I know it's not real.
There you go. My work's done then.
Absolutely.
Thanks for listening to the HIV Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please like, rate and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts.
You can now also follow us on Instagram and TikTok at the HIV Podcast for behind the scenes insights and video. The HIV Podcast is produced by Thames Valley Positive Support.